I wasn't supposed to leave that late. Originally, the plan had been to hit the road by 10 a.m., maybe even earlier. The company was relocating the last of its gear from our old site in Wyoming to the main office here in Indiana. Most of the time I flew, just a quick connecting flight, shake some hands and bounce. But now and then, we had bigger items, stuff that couldn't be boxed and shipped. I'd driven out twice before, once in a Sprinter van and once with an empty trailer, and both times I enjoyed the solitude. That long stretch of highway through Nebraska, quiet, meditative, gave me time to think. So, when the office asked for a volunteer to drive one of the last runs, a used 20-foot box truck we'd picked up cheap from a liquidation, I said sure. There was a piece to driving alone at night, or so I thought. That piece was gone now. But let me start at the beginning. The morning I was supposed to leave, we hit a delay. The printer, a massive industrial copy machine from the old office, was stuck at a depot 2 towns over. It didn't arrive until after 2:30 p.m., and by the time it was loaded and secured in the back of the truck, it was pushing 4 p.m. I considered going anyway, but I've driven through rush hour traffic in Gary before. No thanks. I decided to wait until just after 5 o'clock to leave. That decision might have saved my life, or maybe it got me noticed. I've never been sure. By the time I merged onto Interstate 80 West, the sky was already bruising up with twilight. The box truck's cabin smelled faintly of dust, diesel, and old vinyl. It had that used truck feel, everything rattled, the radio was picky, and the AC only worked if I thumped the console twice. But it moved, and I knew the route like the back of my hand. The first couple of hours went fine. I made my usual stops: coffee, bathroom, cheap fast food. As the city lights faded behind me and the radio gave way to static, I flicked it off and rode in silence. Eventually, I hit that familiar stretch of road in northern Iowa. 2-lane, dark, and forgotten. Nothing but trees, fields, and the occasional exit sign you'd miss if you blinked. I'd been through it before, but it never stopped feeling haunted. Not by ghosts exactly, just by emptiness. It was the kind of place you could disappear into and no one would know. Around 12:30 a.m., I pulled into a rest stop I'd used a couple of times. There was a long, arched lamp casting yellow light across the lot, a single vending machine, a dingy restroom building, and a couple of benches. Empty, except for a pickup truck parked at the far end. I didn't think much of it. I went to the restroom, washed my face, and tried to shake the creeping exhaustion from behind my eyes. I thought about maybe just climbing into the back of the truck and sleeping for a couple of hours, but something told me to press on. When I stepped out, that pickup truck was parked right next to mine now, close enough to ding my door. A guy stood between the vehicles. He looked to be in his late 40s or early 50s, thin, tall, wiry, dressed in jeans, a flannel shirt, and a ball cap. Nothing outwardly strange, but something about his stillness made me pause. "Hey," he said casually. "That your truck?" "Yeah," I replied. He nodded, then tilted his head, looking at the back. "You having trouble with it or anything? Looked like you were checking something earlier." "No," I said flatly. "Just taking a break." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just wondering. Sometimes those old rigs have electrical quirks. Lights, brakes, you know." I gave him a tight smile, didn't answer, and got into my truck. I locked the doors. My gut told me something was off. He didn't follow. Just stood there for a beat too long, then slowly walked back to his truck. I drove off. The next stretch was dead quiet. Pitch black except for the glow of the moon and my headlights. No traffic. Just the occasional road sign or glint of an animal's eyes in the ditch. Then something happened. Every light in the truck died at once. No headlights. No dash lights. Even the little glowing symbols on the radio and AC cut out. Total darkness. My first thought was the battery, or maybe a blown fuse, but the engine was still running. I tapped the brakes. No brake lights behind me, just void. I didn't panic. Not right away. I pulled over slowly, my heart thudding. I sat for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Then, with a sudden burst of frustration, I slammed my fist against the dashboard. Everything came back to life. Lights, gauges, the hum of the AC fan. It was like nothing had happened. My stomach twisted. I wasn't superstitious, but I'm not stupid either. Something was wrong. The timing was too perfect. That guy back at the rest stop, he'd mentioned electrical quirks. Why would a stranger say something that specific unless he knew? I didn't stop again. I drove with one eye on the road and one eye on my rearview mirror. The fear was creeping up from my gut into my throat. I remembered a 24-hour gas station about 10 miles ahead, just over the county line in a town called Avery. I'd stopped there before. Familiar. I rolled into the station around 1:30 a.m., pulled up to a pump and jumped out. The air was cold. I started fueling up and trying to calm down. Then I saw the pickup truck. Same one from earlier. Same dented bumper. Same faded red paint. It pulled up on the street outside the station, engine idling. The driver didn't get out, just sat there, watching. I felt ice trickle down my spine. I didn't finish pumping. I left the handle in and walked quickly toward the front of the gas station. Just as I was nearing the door, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into the lot. 2 deputies inside, probably just grabbing coffee or doing a routine check. I waved. They stepped out, and I smiled like I wasn't trying to hold my guts in place. "Evening," I said. "Hey, quick question. Is the road west of here in decent shape? I've got a long drive and don't want to hit any closures." One of the deputies, a woman, nodded. "Should be fine. Weather's clear." I motioned over my shoulder. "Just saw someone acting strange back there. Same truck's been behind me for a while. Maybe it's nothing." The other deputy looked down the road. The pickup peeled away. Fast. They offered to escort me to the edge of the county line, but I declined. I told them I was probably just tired and paranoid. They nodded, but I could see the woman deputy didn't quite buy it. I got back into the truck, now almost trembling. My hands wouldn't stay still. I drove another 20 minutes before I saw a sign for a motel, an old 2-story place just off the road. I didn't care if it was sketchy. I pulled in, parked under the only working light, and went straight to the front desk. The clerk barely looked up. I paid in cash, grabbed the key, and double-locked my room. I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept expecting to hear a knock, or a window breaking. But the night passed. Nothing happened. The next morning, under the glare of the sun, the world felt normal again. Almost. When I made it to our old office in Wyoming, I handed off the keys and told them to have the truck looked at. I didn't go into the details, just said the lights had cut out mid-drive and come back randomly. They later called and said the mechanic found nothing wrong. Battery was solid, wiring was fine, no shorts, no faults, no corrosion. But I knew. Deep down I knew. That man had done something. I don't know if he rigged the truck to disable. Maybe something temporary, just enough to make me pull over on a dark stretch of highway. Maybe he was planning to follow me, wait until I stopped and then... What? Rob me? Kill me? I don't know. But I've never made that drive again, and I never will. Sometimes I wonder how many people he's done that to. How many late-night travelers didn't get lucky, didn't find a cop, didn't make it to a motel. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't slammed my fist on the dash, or if I'd just stayed asleep in the back of that truck at the rest stop. But most of all, I wonder what he was waiting for, because I think he had a plan, and I think next time he'll finish it. It was supposed to be just a quick weekend escape, not some story I'd still be whispering about 35 years later, wondering if we were supposed to make it out of that field at all. Back in the fall of 1987, I was stationed at Hawthorne Air Base, a mid-size Air Force installation on the outskirts of Marion, Nebraska. The military had brought people from all over the country, but I'd found 2 kindred spirits in my roommate, Renee, and a girl from another squadron, Katie. We were young, all just barely 20, and each of us clung to our tiny freedoms when off duty like it was oxygen. Renee and I were both black, city girls used to loud trains and late-night diners. Katie was white, born and raised in rural Indiana. What brought us together was a mix of stubbornness and humor, and the fact that all three of us had names people constantly misspelled. We joked we were the E sisters, Tracy with an E, me, Renee with double E, and Katie with an I. No one ever believed us when we introduced ourselves, and we leaned into that, spinning stories and watching people's confused reactions with glee. That weekend we just wanted out. Out of uniforms, out of drills, out of cold chow hall food. So we packed up Katie's beat-up blue Cutlass Supreme and decided to head to Caraway, a larger city about 3 hours south, just over the state line in Missouri. We figured we'd catch a movie, eat real food, and maybe flirt a little. Just teenage girl things. The road was clear, the weather perfect, and our spirits were high. We had the windows down, music up, and were singing along to Whitney Houston's So Emotional like it was the national anthem. Katie was driving and, true to her nickname, Leadfoot Katie, we were flying down Highway 75 well over the limit. Then the red and blue lights lit up behind us. And everything changed. Katie pulled over without hesitation, cursing softly under her breath but not really worried. "Probably just a speeding ticket," she said, reaching for her wallet and registration. Renee and I quieted, sitting up straighter. A state trooper walked up slowly, a towering figure in the side mirror. He didn't look particularly old, maybe mid-40s, with pale skin and a mustache so thick it looked cartoonish. His uniform was spotless, sunglasses still on despite the late afternoon light fading. He didn't say hello, didn't ask for Katie's license. He looked past her at me and Renee, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "You three, follow me. Don't try anything stupid, or this won't end with just a ticket." He turned and walked back to his patrol car. We stared at each other in silence. "What the hell?" Renee whispered. Katie looked stunned. "Why didn't he just... what did I even do?" But she started the car again and pulled out onto the road behind him. We followed him off the highway a few minutes later, down an unmarked exit I didn't even notice until we were already on it. A single battered sign said private road, no outlet. Everything in me screamed that this wasn't protocol, that something was wrong. But what could we do? He was a cop, and we were three girls in a strange state, in a stranger place. The paved road turned to gravel, then gravel turned to dirt. Cornfields rose on either side, the golden stalks brushing against the wind like a warning. It was nearly dusk, the sky bleeding orange behind us. We stopped speaking. Our joy turned into cold, creeping fear. When he finally stopped, it was in front of a dilapidated barn tucked into a clearing. It looked like it had been abandoned decades ago, except it wasn't, because 5 men came out, all armed, all watching us. They didn't say anything, just stood beside the barn, some holding shotguns, others leaning against the rotting wooden beams like they were expecting company. One of them spat into the dirt, another laughed, dry and low. Katie's hand hovered over the gear shift, but she didn't move. The officer walked back to the car and tapped on her window. "Step out, now." Katie obeyed. I could see her legs trembling as she got out. He said something quietly, gestured toward his cruiser, and she walked stiffly over to it. He opened the passenger door and she got in. Then he walked over to Renee's side of the car and stood silently, looking in at us through the glass. I could feel Renee's grip tightening on my arm. Neither of us said a word. Behind him, the men from the barn didn't move, didn't speak, but I felt the weight of their eyes like knives. Minutes passed. Katie came running. Tears were streaming down her face as she flung open the driver's door, jumped in, and slammed it shut. "Don't say anything," she whispered, shaking violently. "Just hold on." The officer was walking back slowly, his boots crunching on the dirt. He leaned into Renee's window, eyes cold and hard. "Is it true?" he asked. "Y'all military?" Renee swallowed. "Yes, sir. We're stationed at Hawthorne. There was a long pause. Then he said, "Get out of here. Back to base. I see you again. It won't end like this." We didn't wait for another word. Katie threw the car in reverse and gunned it, tires kicking up dust and corn husks. The men didn't try to stop us, but they watched, silent, like ghosts with guns. We didn't speak for miles, not until we crossed back into Nebraska. Only then did Katie finally pull over, her entire body shaking as she gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands. "I thought we were gonna die," she sobbed. Renee and I both wrapped our arms around her. "Did he hurt you?" She shook her head. But he asked me what I was doing with 2NS. Said we were probably in a stolen car. I tried to explain, gave him my military ID. He said if I wanted y'all to walk out of there alive, I'd have to. I don't even want to say it. She broke down completely then. Renee and I couldn't breathe. It hit all of us in that moment what had almost happened, and that the only reason we were driving away instead of buried in that field was because of that little laminated piece of plastic, a military ID. We sat there on the shoulder of that highway for a long time, crying, holding each other, trying to process what we couldn't understand. We never told anyone. We didn't report it, didn't file a complaint, didn't even mention it on base. Because who would believe 3 teenage girls over a state trooper? We told ourselves to forget it, to move on. But I never forgot. Because deep down, I know that somewhere in Missouri, maybe not too far from that barn, there are others who weren't so lucky. I don't normally take back roads at night, but that Friday I was exhausted and desperate to get home quicker. My name's Emily Harper. I'm 28, live in a small town outside Freiburg in southern Germany, though I wasn't always the kind of person to be spooked by a late-night drive. I work as a shift manager at a small packaging warehouse in a quiet industrial district. The kind of job where the days drag, but the nights feel even longer when you're the last one locking up. That night I'd spent the evening at my parents' house in a village about 40 minutes from mine. My mom insisted on feeding me like she always does, and by the time I left, it was nearly midnight. I had 2 options to get home: the main highway that looped around the valley or a winding rural road that cut through dense woods and farmland. I'd taken that road countless times growing up. It shaved off about 20 minutes, and with no traffic that late, I thought, why not? The first half of the drive was peaceful, just the soft hum of tires on asphalt and the glow of the dashboard. The moon was hidden behind a low ceiling of clouds, but my headlights cut clean through the mist clinging to the fields. Somewhere past a village called Rudenheim, the road narrowed to a single lane with no shoulder. I slowed down a bit, mainly because deer often darted out this time of night. That's when I saw it. A massive log stretched across the road. It wasn't just a branch. It was a full, thick, dead tree trunk. It hadn't fallen naturally either. It was placed, deliberate, like it was set there to block someone. I slowed to a stop, flicked on my hazards and muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." There were no streetlights out here, and my high beams barely revealed anything past the log. Turning around wasn't really an option. The road was too narrow, and reversing through those sharp bends in the dark was a recipe for disaster. I checked my phone. No signal. Figures. I stepped out into the crisp night air, my boots crunching on gravel. The log looked weathered, dry, like it had been dead for a while. But there weren't any other broken limbs or debris around, just this single, clean-cut trunk. Suspicious, but not enough to set off real alarm bells yet. I walked back to the car, popped the trunk for a pair of work gloves I always kept there, and started dragging the thing off the road. It was lighter than I expected, maybe hollow inside. Took me about 10 minutes to shift it enough to squeeze past with the car. That's when I noticed headlights behind me. A car had pulled up maybe 30 meters away. No horn, no flash of lights, just parked silently, idling. I gave a half wave to acknowledge them and got back into my car, brushing some dirt off my hands. I figured they were just waiting for me to move so they could pass. As I pulled around the log and continued driving, I watched the car in the mirror. It started moving too. It wasn't alarming at first. This was a one-lane road, of course they'd follow the same path. But I drove slowly through the next few bends and noticed that they were matching my speed perfectly. Not tailgating, not trying to pass, just mirroring. I told myself not to be paranoid. People follow each other all the time on country roads. But the knot in my stomach kept tightening. 10 minutes later, I passed through a tiny farming hamlet. Just a handful of houses and an old gas house with one flickering porch light. I slowed at the curve and turned right toward the direction of my town. So did they. I glanced at my phone again. Still no signal. I was only 15 minutes from home now, but something told me not to go there directly. If this was just coincidence, fine. But if it wasn't, I made another turn off the main road, looping around a back street that ran parallel to my neighborhood. I pulled into the driveway of an empty house, one that had been for sale for months, and killed the lights. The car behind me kept going, and then slowed. It stopped in the middle of the street. My heart started racing. I grabbed my pepper spray from the cup holder and locked all the doors. The other car idled for a few seconds. Then the driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. He didn't approach right away. He just stood there in the road, motioning toward the back of my car with one arm. It was slow, calculated. His body language didn't scream danger, more like urgency. Still, I didn't open the window. He then called out, his voice muffled by the closed window. "There's someone in your trunk," he said, raising his hands like he wanted to show he meant no harm. I blinked, confused. What? I cracked the window, just a couple of inches. "What did you say?" I asked sharply. He took a step closer but stayed at a respectful distance. "I swear I'm not trying to scare you," he said. "When you were moving that tree, I got out of my car to help. I walked toward you, but before I could say anything, I saw a guy sneak into the back of your car, into the trunk. I tried calling out, but I don't think you heard me." My breath caught. "What?" "I didn't want to scare you while you were still driving. I was going to call the police, but I figured I should stay behind in case he tried anything." I stared at him. It could have been a lie, but what if it wasn't? He took out his phone and showed me a call log. He had called the police about 10 minutes ago. Still unsure, I made the decision to believe him. "I already gave them your license plate," he added. "They're on their way." I didn't move. I just stared at the rearview mirror. I'd driven with a stranger in my trunk. My trunk, while covered by a hatch, was connected to the cabin. I had a fold-down seat with a small pass-through door I never used. If the guy had known about it. Moments later, 2 police cars pulled in from opposite ends of the street. Flashlights, commands, guns drawn. They opened the trunk. There was a man in there, unarmed, disoriented looking, but very much real. They pulled him out, cuffed him, and put him in the back of a cruiser. The officer told me the man had no ID, wouldn't say much, but he was carrying a box cutter and a pair of gloves. I didn't even want to imagine what might have happened had I driven straight home. I sat on the curb shaking for half an hour, drinking water one of the officers handed me. The man who had followed me, his name was Adrian, waited nearby and eventually came over to ask if I was okay. He said he was a paramedic in a nearby town and had just been heading home when he saw me struggling with the log. He didn't know what the guy's intentions were either. But he did know something didn't sit right, and he chose to follow his instincts. I never got the full story from the police. They said the man in the trunk had a record, break-ins mostly. They guessed he was looking for a target and had used the staged roadblock to sneak in. If Adrian hadn't noticed. Since then, I always lock my car, even on quiet country roads, even when I'm just stepping out for a minute. The scariest part wasn't just that someone got into my car. It was that I had no idea, no noise, no weight shift, nothing. I was alone, but I wasn't. It was supposed to be one of our harmless late-night drives, the kind of thing we did when the world felt too small, when silence wrapped around the city like a blanket, and we couldn't sleep without seeing what lay just a little farther down some unknown road. We did it all the time. My fiancée Harper and I, two night owls with a knack for chasing rain and broken yellow lines. We lived in Weston, a college town crammed with fast food joints and one too many vape shops, but had 30 minutes in any direction, and the neon bled out into woods, farmland, and towns so small they didn't bother naming their streets, just numbered them like afterthoughts. We were used to getting a little lost. That was part of the fun. We'd fill a thermos with black coffee, throw on hoodies, and pick a direction. We always started out on Clarion Road, a main stretch through Weston, and let it guide us until it didn't. And that night, early November, cold rain slicking the windows, midnight creeping up on 1 a.m. We'd left the apartment around 11:30, itching to escape the walls closing in around us after a fight with Harper's sister over Thanksgiving plans. The air was heavy with tension, but the car was our neutral ground. "I just need to get out of the city for a bit," she had said, shoving her auburn hair into a beanie, still barefoot on the kitchen tile. We didn't bring bags. We never did. No one ever does when they think they're coming right back. The rain had been steady the whole drive, never a downpour, just a cold, needling drizzle that made the trees blur at the edges and turned the world into a watercolor painting. We'd been driving north for about an hour, letting the road decide our path. Harper's boots were on the dash, her breath fogging the passenger side window as she flicked between music and the faint green glow of Google Maps. "Where the hell are we?" she murmured, zooming in and out on her phone. "It says we're near Barrett County. That's not right. We should have hit 88 by now." Barrett was one of those places that even locals forgot existed, just slivers of map between bigger towns. It didn't show up properly on any navigation apps. The roads twisted like fishing line tangled in weeds. You could be 5 miles from a highway and feel like you were 2 hours from civilization. I slowed the car, the tires crunching over wet gravel. The road had shifted from pavement to something rougher, muddier. Branches arched overhead like ribs in an open chest. Our headlights were barely cutting through the mist. "You think we missed a turn?" I asked, keeping my hands at 10 and 2, trying to pretend I wasn't already uneasy. Harper didn't answer immediately. She chewed on the edge of her sleeve and leaned forward. "Number, I don't think so. I feel like we should have come to an intersection already." We hadn't passed another vehicle in 40 minutes, 10 more minutes of silence. Then we spotted a narrow road branching off to the right. It didn't have a name, just a black strip of crumbling asphalt snaking uphill through the trees. I turned in without thinking, maybe too fast. "Careful," Harper muttered, gripping the oh shit handle as branches scraped against the car like fingernails on a window. It took a minute to climb. Then the road opened into a clearing. The first thing I saw was the house. It looked like it had been dropped there by accident. An old colonial-style place, 2 stories, leaning slightly to one side like it was drunk. The siding was ripped in spots, windows broken or boarded up. The porch sagged under its own weight. No lights, no signs of life, except... "There's cats," Harper whispered, her voice suddenly very small. "Holy shit, there's so many of them." She was right. There were at least 20, maybe more. Lurking in the weeds, perched on rusting car parts, weaving through piles of garbage. Their eyes glowed in the headlights, green and orange and white, blinking and staring, unblinking and wrong. The whole yard looked like a scrapyard that had given up on itself. Tires, barrels, tangled wire, shattered glass. Tools rusted straight through. An old pickup truck sat slumped against a tree, its front fender missing, paint eaten by time. Harper slapped my arm. Turn around, Eli, right now." Something sharp pinged off the windshield with a dull crack. I flinched. Harper screamed. "What the hell was that?" she gasped. I didn't answer. The crack had split the top corner of the glass. I stared through it, stomach twisting. Then I saw him. A man stepped out from the tree line. He was tall, maybe 6'3", hunched, dragging a shovel behind him like it was too heavy for his arms. His coat was soaked and sagging, navy blue and ancient. His beard was scraggly and matted like he'd been sleeping in leaves. The porch door creaked open. A woman stepped out. She didn't move like she had bones, more like something that had practiced being human and hadn't quite mastered it. Tall, hair long and gray, tangled into ropes. Her hands were what I noticed most. Dark, not like dirt, like something had stained them. They hung at her sides and she rubbed them slowly on her skirt as she stared at us. Headlights didn't quite reach her eyes. The cats scattered. Harper was slamming her hand on the door lock button over and over like it would suddenly grow teeth and protect us. Go, Eli, go. I slammed the car into reverse, bouncing over metal and branches. The Mazda fishtailed as I backed down the narrow road, praying I wouldn't slide into a tree. We didn't breathe until we hit the gravel again. 15 minutes later, the forest started to thin out. Jesus Christ, Harper whispered. She was crying now, her knees pulled to her chest. What was that place? I don't know. I don't want to know. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Headlights. One set. Not far behind. Are they following us? Harper sat up, eyes wide, smearing tears across her cheeks. That's the truck. That's the fucking truck. It was. Same grille. Same rust patterns. Same busted fender. They'd followed us. We turned. So did they. 2 more roads. Same thing. I hit 80 on a wet road that wasn't built for 45. Eventually we hit a town. Mosswood. It wasn't home, but it had lights and people and a gas station open late. I skidded into the lot, jumped out, and acted like I needed gas even though the tank was half full. The truck passed us. Slow. Staring. We waited 20 minutes before leaving. I bought a protein bar. Harper got chips she never opened. The drive back to Weston felt longer than the rest of the night combined. Every time a car came up behind us, we flinched. Every turn was second-guessed. By the time we got home, it was 3:40 a.m. Harper sat in the shower for an hour. I sat on the bed, staring at my cracked windshield, replaying the moment that rock, or whatever it was, hit us. I kept thinking about the woman's hands, how they looked like they'd been dipped in something that could never wash off, how they never stopped rubbing against her skirt, like she was trying to feel something that wasn't there. We never went on a night drive again, and I still check my rearview mirror before I pull out of our apartment lot, just in case. I didn't even want ice cream that night. It had been one of those punishingly humid southern evenings that stuck to your skin like regret. Our barracks air conditioner was barely keeping up, and I'd just bombed the electronic systems exam I'd spent 2 weeks trying to cram for. I felt stupid, sweaty, and restless. That kind of mood where doing anything, literally anything, felt better than stewing in your own failure. It was late April, just a couple of weeks before my 20th birthday. I was stationed at a Navy technical school about 30 minutes outside of a town we'll call Granville, South Carolina. It was one of those places where nothing was really close, but nothing was far enough to stop you from trying to escape boredom. I didn't have a car, but I was close friends with Caleb, a laid-back guy from Georgia, who somehow made failing tests feel like a joke we were all in on. Caleb had wheels once in a while, usually through his other friend, Mason, a wiry, fast-talking transplant from Brooklyn. Mason wasn't someone I'd call a friend exactly, more like an opportunistic alliance. He had a beat-up silver Tacoma and a tendency to make everything feel like a sketchy Craigslist deal. But that night, a car was a car. So when I mumbled something like, "Man, I could really use a damn milkshake or something," and Mason raised an eyebrow, it snowballed into a plan. We decided to drive out to an ice cream shop Caleb swore by, called Maple Creamery, on the far edge of Granville. I didn't even question it. Looking back, maybe I should have. But at the time, It felt like the harmless kind of spontaneous. 10:14 p.m. The three of us piled into Mason's truck. I was in the back, legs crammed up, one hand out the window catching the warm breeze. The truck smelled faintly of old fast food wrappers and pine-scented air freshener. Maple Creamery was open late, and it was one of those quirky local spots with neon signs, a sticky counter, and a radio tuned to 80s rock. I got a double scoop of butter pecan in a waffle cone. We sat on the curb out front, laughing, licking melting ice cream, cracking jokes about how we'd all flunked the same test in different dumb ways. It felt good. Simple. One of those rare evenings where no one was thinking about qualifications, duty rosters, or their next deployment. As we climbed back into the truck, Caleb pulled out his phone. "All right, so head back down 6 and hang a left at Bellwood, then..." "Nah, I got a better way," Mason interrupted, sliding the keys into the ignition. "Shortcut. Way quicker." Caleb and I exchanged a look. Mason grinned like he'd just been handed a secret. "It's cool. You'll see. Scenic even." That was red flag number 1, and we ignored it. 11:02 p.m. We were driving, and driving. The city lights gave way to dark stretches of highway. Then those gave way to something else, something quieter. He'd taken us off 6 about 15 minutes ago, muttering about just needing to connect back near Briar's Cross. But nothing looked familiar, and my ice cream high had faded into mild unease. We hadn't seen another car in ages, no streetlights, just the pale wash of Mason's high beams on a cracked 2-lane road surrounded on both sides by pine forest. I had that creeping feeling you get when you're in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal. "Where the hell are we?" Caleb asked, leaning forward. "Almost there," Mason replied, still calm, still cocky. "Just relax, it's a loopback. I've been this way before." "Don't look like you have," I muttered, just loud enough for Caleb to hear. Then Mason said, "Hang on, I gotta piss." "Dude," Caleb said sharply, "just pull over." Yeah, I will. Don't want to get clipped if someone barrels down here." "There hasn't been a car in 20 minutes, I said, voice dry. But Mason was already slowing down, eyes scanning the side of the road. He turned the wheel and pulled onto a narrow dirt trail that disappeared between the trees. That was red flag number 2. But again, we let it slide. 11:19 p.m. I remember exactly what it felt like when the truck went past the tree line. The forest swallowed up the moonlight and everything turned black. The dirt trail was narrow and uneven, the kind of road meant for 4-wheelers and maybe hunting trucks, not random late-night joyrides. "Dude, seriously," Caleb said, his voice sharp now. "Turn around. People don't like trespassers out here. You're gonna get us shot." "Relax," Mason mumbled. "I'm just going up a little so I'm off the main road." My stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. Not just, "we're lost" wrong. Not just, "maybe this guy's a dumbass" wrong. It was the kind of primal, gut-level wrong that made your skin prickle. And then we saw the fire. 11:22 p.m. It wasn't a small campfire. This was a bonfire. Huge, roaring, and bright. The kind you build when you're either celebrating something or burning something too big to bury. It glowed orange through the trees, casting long shadows in every direction. Caleb whispered, "Nope. Nope. Back up. Now." I leaned forward and froze. There were people, figures moving around the fire, slow, methodical, and others, closing in behind us. Just shadows at first, then shapes. All of them walking, not running, but surrounding the truck like they were waiting for something. Mason sat frozen in the driver's seat, just locked up, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. "Go!" I yelled, hitting his shoulder hard. "Reverse! Now!" He didn't move. Caleb pulled out his flashlight, big, heavy-duty one from his backpack, and started sweeping it around. The beam hit one of the figures to our right, and I swear it didn't flinch, didn't raise a hand, just kept walking. "Mason," Caleb barked. "Back up, they'll move." Finally, Mason stirred. He gripped the gear stick and slowly eased the truck into reverse. I climbed forward between the seats, reaching over to lock the doors. Then I rolled up the rear windows, slammed the sliding back window shut, and sat there shaking. As Mason inched us backward, Caleb kept his flashlight trained behind us. That's when he said it. "They don't have faces." "What?" I choked. Caleb didn't respond, just kept sweeping the flashlight around. His jaw was tight, his breathing uneven. I turned around once, just for a second. There were figures behind us, yes, but there was no detail. No eyes, no mouths, just pale, stretched skin where features should be. The flashlight beam flickered. Then the crowd parted. Mason didn't wait for encouragement. He pressed harder on the gas, the tires skidding slightly on the dirt, then catching. We shot backward through the trees and burst back onto the road. No one said a word. 12:03 a.m. We made it back to the base in dead silence. Mason didn't drop us at our building. He drove to the far corner of the parking lot and just sat there, engine running. I opened the door first. The slam echoed. Caleb got out next, but before I could walk away, he said quietly, "I saw them up close." I wasn't kidding. "I know," I said, and I did. There was no need to talk about it. Mason never spoke of it again. We didn't do ice cream runs after that, didn't even hang out much after. Something out there wasn't right. And whatever it was, whatever we almost interrupted, it saw us. I never told anyone outside of that truck what happened, until now. I never used to be the type of person who scared easily. When you work night shifts long enough, you either grow numb to the weird stuff or you quit. I chose to stay numb. For the last 3 years, I've been working the early morning prep shift at a 24-hour distribution center outside of Linwood, a quiet, warehouse-choked city just east of Raleigh. I usually left around 3:15 a.m. to get there on time. I live in a small apartment in a town called Brookvale, about a 30-minute drive from work, if you take the back roads, which I do, religiously. There are 3 ways to get to the plant, but construction and potholes have narrowed me down to the same route for the last 6 weeks, a 2-lane road called Hollow Creek Drive, lined on both sides with sleepy subdivisions, chain-link fences, and the occasional flickering streetlight. That night, this morning really, I had my usual podcast playing. A true crime episode about a woman who vanished from her apartment with the stove still on. Irony, now that I think about it. It was around 3:32 a.m. I know because I always check the dash when I pass that ugly concrete sign for Crestwood Estates. I hadn't had coffee yet, and my stomach was doing this low, hollow twist. Thought it was just hunger, or caffeine withdrawal. My chest felt tight, but again, nothing new. My anxiety is a regular passenger. I cracked the window just an inch to get a breath of the cold air. That helped a little. I had just passed Ridge Hill Avenue, one of the quiet turnoffs where all the houses have motion sensor floodlights, when I saw him. He came out of nowhere. 1 second, I'm alone. Next second, there's a guy sprinting into the road like he's trying to catch a bus. I swerved hard to the right. My tires screamed, and I slammed the brakes so fast my bag of snacks hit the floor. My heart nearly came out of my throat. I barely missed him. Maybe a foot of space, max. He looked absolutely panicked. Mid-30s, slim build, pale skin, short black hair, green eyes that flashed in my headlights. He was wearing a camouflage hunter's jacket, dirt-streaked jeans, and a look like he'd just run a marathon through hell. He stumbled toward my driver's side window, panting, eyes wide. I instinctively locked the doors, but I didn't drive away. And that's the part that keeps playing in my head now. I should have driven. I shouldn't have stopped. But he looked desperate. Real desperate. I rolled the window down 2 inches, tops. My car was still in drive, foot pressed to the brake. "You okay?" I asked. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He looked over his shoulder like someone was following him, then back at me, breath ragged. "Please, I need help. I don't know where else to go." "What happened?" It killed my dog." His voice cracked. "It tore her apart right in front of my house. I live 2 blocks that way." He pointed behind him toward a subdivision with no lights on. I thought it was a coyote or something, but then I saw this guy. He had a knife. He was coming at me. I ran. I didn't respond right away. I was scanning him now, really looking, and something felt off. If his dog had been attacked, there should have been something. Blood, fur, dirt. But his jacket was spotless. Jeans too, other than the dust from the road. "Wait," I said slowly. "You said you tried to pick up your dog's remains, but there's nothing on you. No blood, nothing." That's when everything changed. His body stilled. The shaking stopped. His breathing went flat. His eyes didn't blink. He just stared at me through the crack in the window. I remember noticing how quiet the road had gotten. No podcast, no engine hum, just silence. He leaned in, slowly, and smiled. Not a grateful smile, not relief. It was the kind of smile you see in mugshots, the kind you can't fake. His eyes went darker somehow. I swear to God they looked almost black. "I was going to help you," he whispered. And then he laughed, loud and sharp, right in my face. Before I could process it, his hand was on the door handle, yanking. I screamed, rolled the window up with my elbow, and floored the gas. Tires squealed. He banged once on the window, open palm, not a punch, just a touch. I didn't look back. I didn't cry until I pulled into the parking lot at work. I parked in my usual corner, under the only light that never flickers, and stared at my shaking hands on the wheel. I still had 7 minutes before my shift. I called my best friend Sam, hoping she might answer even though she usually sleeps until 10. Voicemail. I didn't want to report it. I couldn't describe it well enough. What could I say? A man ran into the street and pretended his dog was murdered and tried to open my car. That doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. But I knew one thing. That man wasn't right. And I don't think he just happened to be there. I think he was waiting. I stayed in my car for as long as I could. My chest was still tight, hands still trembling. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was that heavy, suffocating weight you feel when something has already gone wrong, and you're just now realizing how bad it could have been. Eventually, I had to go inside. I did my shift, mechanically. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't smile. Didn't talk much. I loaded shipments, printed invoices, even joked a little with the morning manager, but inside, I was stuck. My brain kept replaying the moment his eyes changed. That smile. The words, "I was going to help you." That night when I got off, I begged my coworker Terry to follow me home, told him my headlights were out of alignment. I lied, but he didn't ask questions, just followed me all the way to my apartment complex, gave me a wave, and turned off into the night. I barely slept that day. Every noise outside made me jump. I peeked through the blinds every 10 minutes. I parked my car in a different space, backed in, and kept my keys by the door. I even turned off my phone location. For the first time since I moved in, I locked the chain and pushed a chair under the doorknob. By the second night, I tried to convince myself it was all just some weird junkie or mentally ill person having a breakdown, that I'd panicked, misread something, made it worse in my mind. But then I drove past the spot again. Same road, same houses. And there was something new. On the shoulder, right where he'd stepped out, someone had left a small pile of rocks, 6 flat ones, stacked deliberately, with a tiny white dog collar lying on top. No tag, just a collar. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I just stared in the rear view until the darkness swallowed it. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't taken Hollow Creek Drive since. I go the long way now. 35 minutes instead of 30. More lights, more traffic. I even switched my schedule around to start at 6 instead of 4, just so I don't have to be on the road in the dead hours. But I still think about him, about how calm he got, How sudden it all flipped, like he'd been playing a part and finally dropped it. That voice, so measured. "I was going to help you." I've tried to explain it to myself in so many ways, but here's what I really believe. He didn't need help. He wasn't running from something, he was hunting for something. And if I hadn't locked my door, if I'd rolled the window down further, if I'd believed him for even one more second, maybe I'd be the one someone's talking about on a podcast. And maybe I still will be, because sometimes, in the quiet just before dawn, when the roads are empty and the sky's just starting to lighten, I still feel that same pull in my stomach, that same knot, like something's watching me, like someone remembers my face and is waiting for me to forget his. I wasn't supposed to be on the road that late, but when you're 21, broke, and trying to avoid holiday traffic, you make compromises. Finals had just ended, and I was desperate to get home, to get out of the gray walls of campus housing and the thin mattress I'd been sleeping on for a semester. So I packed up my little Nissan hatchback, filled it with snacks, caffeine, and crumpled laundry bags, and started my drive south. My name's Emily. I was a junior at a public university in Indiana back in 2016, majoring in environmental science. My parents had moved to a small town in northern Alabama a few months prior, so this was my first time making the full drive on my own, roughly 7 hours if traffic behaved. That night it was just me, a long stretch of highway, and the comfort of knowing I'd sleep in my own bed by dawn. The plan was simple: avoid the daytime congestion, save on gas by keeping a steady speed, and maybe treat myself to a milkshake somewhere along the way. I left campus around 5 p.m., just as the sky started bleeding into twilight. By the time I crossed into Kentucky, it was nearing midnight, and the world outside had turned to black velvet, stitched with the occasional passing sign or glowing rest stop. I was somewhere on Route 9, a wide, almost desolate highway that curved through the southern countryside, flat in some areas, winding in others, mostly bordered by dark woods and farmland. There hadn't been another car in sight for at least 20 minutes. My phone was connected to the car stereo, playing a shuffled playlist of the Lumineers, Lord Huron, and Fleetwood Mac. It was peaceful in a way that felt earned, until it wasn't. I was fiddling with my phone at a red light on a rural stretch just outside of a town called Pine Hollow, trying to skip a song, when I saw a pair of headlights in the rearview mirror. An 18-wheeler. Big, orange, and loud. I didn't think much of it at first. Trucks ran all night, and I was in a fairly common freight corridor, but something about how fast it approached made me sit up a little straighter. The truck gained on me until it was riding my bumper, closer than made sense for an empty road. I changed lanes to let it pass, but it didn't. Instead, it changed lanes with me. Now it was beside me, matching my speed almost exactly. We cruised like that for several seconds. Then a spotlight, like the kind mounted on the side of the cab, flicked on and aimed directly at my driver's side window. I flinched and instinctively looked straight ahead. The blinding white beam swept across my face, then moved to my passenger side and lingered there, lighting up the inside of my car like a stage. My heart skipped. My mouth went dry. "What the hell?" I whispered aloud, my fingers tightening around the wheel. Was he trying to get my attention? Did he think I had a flat? A busted light? That didn't make sense. He was behind me moments ago. He would have seen it then. And besides, truckers didn't do this. Not at midnight. Not on an empty highway. Not to lone women in tiny cars. I slowed down a bit, hoping he'd speed past me. He didn't. He slowed with me, perfectly synced. Then the spotlight shut off. The truck merged into my lane directly in front of me. Its brake lights pulsed once, almost gently, not hard enough to force a stop. Just a tap, as if testing me. I moved over to the right lane again, trying to regain control of the situation, telling myself I was just being dramatic. Maybe he'd go on. Maybe he was just messing around. But the truck followed. He pulled beside me again, closer this time, and the spotlight flared back on, this time directly into my car's cabin, flooding every inch in harsh white light. I remember the music fading into the background, my fingers numb on the wheel, my breath shallow. I didn't dare look over. That was the first moment I felt the fear in my throat. Not like a scream, but like a warning. A primal feeling that I was prey. I tapped the gas and sped up. My car hummed nervously as the truck stayed with me. Even matched me when I hit 80. Okay, I muttered, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Fuck this. I floored it. My little Nissan wasn't a race car, but it was light, quick. I pushed it to 95 miles per hour and kept going until the truck's lights shrank behind me like twin embers. The road was straight for miles. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A minute later, I saw the lights again, closer. Too close. I looked into the mirror and felt my stomach clench. The truck was gaining. The sheer speed it had to be going, on that road that late, was terrifying. It closed the gap in seconds and pulled up alongside me again, this time veering just slightly toward my car. The spotlight turned on one final time. I couldn't feel my legs. My chest burned from holding my breath. I knew I had to do something, anything. I remembered something my dad once said about defensive driving. Never try to outrun a bigger vehicle, outmaneuver it. So I hit the brakes. The truck blew past me unprepared. I immediately cut in behind it, using its own blind spot like a shield. I stayed tucked behind it, heart hammering, until I saw an exit ramp, one of those poorly lit ones with a fading green sign. I waited until the truck's cab passed the exit line, then jerked the wheel and flew down the ramp. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. I passed a darkened gas station, then a diner, then finally a 24-hour fast food place glowing like a beacon in the dark. A burger palace, empty parking lot, neon sign humming. I pulled in and parked diagonally, half hiding my car behind a dumpster. Got out, shaking. My first thought was, what if there's something wrong with my car? I circled it twice. Tires, intact. Lights, working. No leaks, no visible damage. Nothing. I stood there under the parking lot lights for 10 minutes, then 15, watching the road, waiting. But the truck never came. Eventually, I went inside, ordered coffee just to have something to do. The cashier, a bleary-eyed guy in his 30s, didn't even glance at me. I asked if he'd seen a big orange semi come off the highway. He shook his head. Haven't seen anyone for half an hour. I sat at a table by the window and stared at the empty road. After 20 more minutes, I got back in the car and cautiously made my way to the hotel I had booked in advance. It was just a couple exits south. I checked in, double-locked the door, and curled up in the middle of the bed with the TV on for background noise. I didn't sleep much. I never reported the incident. What would I even say? Hi, a truck chased me with a spotlight. There was no plate number, no name on the cab, nothing to prove it happened. But I knew what I saw. I told my parents it was traffic that delayed me. Told my friends I was just tired. I didn't drive that route again. And to this day, every time I see a big rig on a dark highway, I feel my stomach knot. I still think about the spotlight, the way it searched through the car, like it was looking for something, or someone, and I wonder what he would have done if I'd pulled over. It started like any other summer night. I was 18, freshly graduated, and sick to death of the same four walls of my room. I'd grown up in a small southern town, one of those places where everybody knows everybody, and nothing new ever happens. The kind of town with a main street that shuts down at 8 p.m., a single gas station that doubled as the town's hangout spot, and fields that seemed to stretch on forever. It wasn't bad, just boring. No clubs, no cool bars, no late-night diners like you see in movies. If you wanted entertainment, you had to make it yourself, and for me, that meant cruising. Fill up the tank, grab a drink, maybe a cigarillo, and just drive. No destination, just music, the open road, and the occasional deer crossing your path to jolt you awake. It wasn't much, but it felt like freedom, and it helped clear my mind, especially on those heavy nights when it felt like the whole world was pressing down on my chest. That night was one of those. The air was warm, thick with the scent of honeysuckle and the faint hint of asphalt still clinging to the heat of the day. I left the house a little after 1:30 a.m. after texting my buddy Caleb a half-hearted, "You up?" that never got a reply. My parents were asleep, the town was dead silent, and the only sound was the hum of my car's engine and the low thrum of my Spotify playlist. I hadn't planned on going far. Just a short drive, maybe down Old Briar Hollow Road, long, narrow, lined with tall pines that made it feel like a tunnel. At the very end of it was Ravenwood Preserve, a park mostly used for walking and biking. No camping, no cabins, just dirt trails and signs about poison ivy. But the drive there was beautiful, especially at night. Peaceful. Still. I didn't realize it then, but this night would be anything but peaceful. About 10 minutes into the drive, the houses thinned out and disappeared altogether. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon, lit only by my headlights. I had my windows down, music playing low. I wasn't thinking about much, just watching the lines on the road and enjoying the breeze. The last time I'd been down this road was a few months back with Caleb and Jess, parked in the preserve's lot swapping ghost stories and sneaking sips of beer from Caleb's dad's cooler. That night felt far away now. This time it was just me. As I pulled into the circular loop at the end of the preserve road, I spotted it. A tree, not huge, but thick enough to block the one-way loop that took you out again. It had clearly fallen during a recent storm. We'd had a nasty one 2 nights ago. Tornado sirens, power out, the whole deal. I slowed to a crawl, headlights lighting up the thick bark and scattered limbs. There was no getting over it. Not in my little Toyota. Damn, I muttered, throwing the car into reverse. My plan was simple. Just back up onto the grass a bit, then turn the car around and head out the way I came. I wasn't worried about going the wrong way. It was 3 a.m. and there was nobody out here. But I forgot one thing. Summer storms mean summer mud. The second my back wheels hit the soft grass, I knew I screwed up. The tires spun, throwing up mud, the back end of my car dipping lower into the wet earth. I shifted into drive, then reverse again, trying to rocket free, but it only got worse. The more I gunned the gas, the deeper the wheels sank. I sighed, head hitting the steering wheel. Well, shit. My phone still had signal, thank God. I called my mom first. I knew Dad would lose it if he was the one who picked up. She answered on the third ring, groggy. Hello? Hey, it's me. Don't freak out, I'm okay, but I need help. I explained everything. The drive, the preserve, the tree, the mud. She was quiet for a beat before muttering, Jesus, Isla. What were you doing out there? Just driving, I said softly. I couldn't sleep. She sighed again and said she'd call a tow truck and call me back. You're probably going to be stuck there for at least an hour and a half, she warned. Just stay in the car. Lock the doors. I will. We hung up. I locked the doors. That's when I saw them. Just beyond the reach of my headlights, maybe 30 yards out, a field stretched out. One I never really noticed before. But now it was lit up by dozens of small reflections. Eyes. Deer. At least 30, maybe 40 of them, just standing there, grazing, looking up now and then. Their eyes caught the light, making them glow. It was eerie as hell, but at the same time, kind of mesmerizing. It wasn't unusual to see deer out here, but this many at once? I'd never seen that before. For the next 15 minutes, I alternated between watching them and scrolling on my phone, trying not to overthink the fact that I was stranded in the middle of nowhere, with only wildlife and whatever lurked in the woods as company. My mom finally texted, "Tow truck guy is on his way. Could be 90 minutes. Sorry, sweetie." I groaned, but thanked her. There was nothing to do now but wait. I reclined the seat, locked my phone, and closed my eyes. I don't know how long I was out, 45 minutes maybe, but I woke up with my heart pounding. Not from a dream, from a feeling. It was like the air changed, heavy, tight, like something was watching me. And it wasn't the deer. I sat up fast, disoriented. My phone had slipped between the seat and the center console. I grabbed it, the screen lighting up the interior. 4:11 a.m. I blinked, scanned around. Still dark, still quiet. Deer still in the field, but something felt wrong. My fingers fumbled through the center console until I found my little pocket knife. Not much, but better than nothing. I clicked it open, kept it in my lap. I kept telling myself it was fine, that it was just nerves. But the hairs on my neck disagreed. And then I saw it. Not directly. Not at first. Just movement. To the left of the field. In the trees. Something was there. A shadow. Tall. Thin. Still. Too still. I froze. The deer didn't run. They weren't spooked. But I was. I leaned forward, squinting. My headlights didn't quite reach that far. But I could make out something. It was human-shaped. But it wasn't moving. And then slowly, it did. It stepped forward. Out of the trees. Not fast, not threatening. Just watching. I turned the key in the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Engine clicked but didn't turn over. "Oh, come on," I hissed, panic rising in my chest. I'd left the lights on too long. The third try, the engine finally roared to life. I hit the gas. The tires spun again. Mud flung everywhere. I screamed, punched the steering wheel, tried again. This time, the car lurched forward slightly. Traction. Enough to move a few inches. The figure was closer now, still walking, still watching. I floored it, rocking the car back and forth, mud flying up on my windows. Finally, miraculously, the car gained enough grip to roll onto the pavement with a jolt. I didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't breathe until I hit the main road. The tow truck passed me on the way out. I didn't stop to talk. I just kept going. I got home as the sun started to rise and sat in my driveway for a long time before going inside. I told my mom the tow guy couldn't find me. I didn't sleep the rest of the day. That was 2 years ago. I've been back to Ravenwood Preserve since then, but never alone, and never at night. I still don't know what I saw that night. Maybe just a hiker, caught in the same trap of boredom and insomnia that brought me there. But I don't think so. I know what I felt. And some part of me, some instinct buried deep, tells me that whatever it wasn't lost. It was waiting.